Well, I have everybody in our breakout room working on a scenario. I just wanted to do a quick welcome for everybody. My name is Vicky Hanna and I'm delivering the training for tonight for this particular unit. Let's get started. I'll just myself there. So, in the spirit of reconciliation, Hayter Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live, and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual, and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. And I extend this welcome out to anyone who is watching our recording or attending our classes who identifies as First Nation people as we live and work and study on their lands which have never been ceded. So I come to you from Tarrabillang Bunda in Queensland, often referred to as Bundaberg. So we are a night college, but I just wanted to run through a little bit of our Zoom etiquette. We are a cameras on college, just so that we can see you and interact with you. But I'm also really mindful that if you need to manage that space for yourself, please do that. We're all working from home, and many of you are at the end of a very big day because we are a night college. So please manage that so that you are comfortable. Microphones on mute so we don't pick up any background noise in case we are recording. We have class break times. They vary depending on the class and how we're running. Tonight, it is, of course, a different time, but it just gives you an idea that we will have a 10-minute break, and then people can, at 8 o'clock, take another 10-minute break or circle back and pick up what we've done tonight and commence with your own assessment work, and then or remain in class till 9 p.m. If we've got a big class participation can be your hands up that sits on the bottom of your screen under reactions. Respectful relationships. So we come into this space as adult learners and with different lived experiences, different whys and demands on us. And we come into this space as workers, as sector workers, or soon to be sector workers. Be mindful and kind with your words. Ensure that we de-identify if we're sharing a story, unless, of course, it is public information. But we would still need to have consent to do that. And also, if you share yourself, keep it inside that boundary, that healthy professional boundary for yourself. Of what that is like as we start to move into that space. There is support for one-on-one relationships as well, where we do learner support meetings and you can book in. And then I like to make the end part of my classes that opportunity for everyone to be able to stay back and do that. Between 8 and 9, we have our whatever our needs are, and you may not have questions every week. But for those of you who do, it can be challenging to try and nail a trainer or an assessor's foot to the ground. You're here in class. We want to make that the most efficient that we can for you. No smoking or vaping on camera. I do want to let you know that some of the work that we cover has a trigger warning, so that psychological safety is important. And then also be kind to yourself. I know that 25 minutes and then step away and stop and do something different, but you need to manage that for yourself as well. So make sure you make time for other activities outside of when we are working together in class time. This is an 18-month long qualification. Inside that 18 months is 200 hours of work placement, which we assist you unless you're working in the sector and you would like to do that work placement in your own workplace, or if there's an area that you're really interested in and you would like to source that, sometimes we need you to also be looking in your local area. We do have a company that does a lot of this for us, but you remain a HADA learner throughout the whole journey. And this is a national company, and they find places within the whole of Australia, every state and territory. And they will refer to links that they already have, but I like you to be involved in where you would like it. So if you had 2 or 3 places that you would like to be, then they're your recommendations, and we will have our that company approach those ones. So we need some information from you as well. I like that, because then it is a really good fit. You're part of that, and we want you to collaborate in that as well. So you attend an interview and you can say, look, after the interview, I don't think it is a good fit, and they will arrange one other interview for you at another place. Otherwise, then it does really fall back on learners to do that. And I'm also happy to assist, start sourcing what might be available in your area. I only do that for everyone in the classes that I teach, not as a general. But sometimes I might offer a network that I might have interstate. If I can assist, I'm happy to. So just some of the guidelines. We are your RTO, and I've done our trainer intro, some key information classes. We run 6 to 9 p.m. always Melbourne time. HADA is head office Melbourne. We've covered a little bit around Zoom etiquette and some breaks. Your emergency procedures are self-care. You have full control over that log in, log out button. And you definitely need to be able to only do what feels healthy and safe for you in these spaces. And if I need to, for whatever reason, do a reasonable adjustment or vary how I deliver these classes, please contact me directly. And we will individualize something for you for whatever reasons. Workplace health and safety considerations, make sure that you're taking breaks, you're staying hydrated, and I won't be fully responsible for taking those breaks. So definitely try, but I really need you to remind me, hey, Vicky, let's have a break. But if you've got a differing ability or a particular way that you best learn, I like to tailor my classes to suit everyone. So once we get to know each other and our needs, and we do maybe a one-on-one, you've got a learner support meeting with your trainer or a trainer and assessor with this qualification. And there's several of us. You can book 1 hour each month, one-on-one with the trainer and assessor. And you can discuss how you're progressing with your studies. Email, though, I do work for HADA. I start at 1 in the afternoon and I work till 10 p.m. at night, except for Wednesdays. And I sometimes do the occasional weekend or maybe an additional night. The only night I don't work is Wednesdays. And then depending on what those who are in my classes needs are, I'll try and fit in some extra time to work around you as well. Can you use AI in this space? Absolutely, as a resource, but you cannot copy and paste it. That falls in under plagiarism. Student code of conduct, make sure you go to your learner's guide as well. It covers that, and it also does in your instructions. We are 100% digital at HADA. In our head office, they don't even have a piece of paper. So everything is picked up in our internal systems, and our platform that we use, our learning management system, is called Accelerate. And you have a student portal, and information gets sent to you. Inside your portal are a few areas. If you don't feel that you've been shown how to use your portal, take that to your learner support officers and ask for an onboarding again. Don't stay stuck. Every new system we work with, though, takes a bit to get familiar with it. The course outline and our lesson structure, I have covered that a bit, how I work. Most of our units run for 3 weeks. This is clustered, so it will run for 6 weeks. And I've covered a little bit of that before we started recording tonight to those who are attending class. Course expectations and self-study requirements. You have written assessments and you have skills assessments. Skills are role plays, and written are assessment pieces, project, answering quizzes, and you're guided with that. You get 3 attempts. And there's absolutely no penalty whatsoever how many times you attempt, and I can open up as many attempts as you need. But if you haven't quite got it, if there's 10 questions and you get 9 right, your assessor will send it back with some feedback for you and guide you. If you don't feel the feedback is clear enough, then please contact our learner support officers. If they can't assist you, they will send it straight back to me. And then I may send you out an email or make a phone call if I know what times work for you best. Expectations from you while you're studying this unit, I don't know what they are yet if you're new to HADA. But then I also know that with every unit, there's some things we breeze through and other things we go, I'm not there yet, and I need that one-on-one. Can you assist? I do some one-on-ones before classes. I have a standing person at 5 p.m. and we jump out and at about 5:40. So I could probably go 4:30, but it doesn't give us much of a window leading up to class. Unfortunately, but if it's a quick question, I am around. And all you need to do is to let me know, and you do that by contacting me by email, which I will cover again for everyone. And the assessment requirements, dates and submission procedures. The assessment requirements, you've got instructions. The dates, you've got right up until your end date to complete any of your work, but I encourage you to complete your full unit. With this one, it has 3 tasks, task 1, task 2, task 3, and I'm going to cover some of that at the end of our session tonight in our recording. But right now we have everyone out in a breakout room, and they're going to be returning back in just a moment. So I'm going to jump out of this space and cover this for everybody as well. So I'll just open that up, and I might let everyone out of their breakout rooms and we'll join each other again. Stop sharing, and I'll pause.
Yeah.
We're recording, so go all over the place as much as you want. So we'll go to the room that Maria was in. Maria, you had the father.
The father, yes. So first we spoke about knowing all this history, that we needed to put our bias aside and be there as an advocate and basically listen to what he has to say without judgment. So during the intake, we've put we want to establish their living arrangements, make sure they're in a good area, they're safe, or whether they need accommodation, those sorts of things.
Yes.
We know that it is the dad and the son that are there. We thought we would confirm his ideal outcome of what he is looking for. Ask about if there are any court orders in place. We know that he has breached the court orders, so we would find that out. We also thought, because of the controlling nature of this man, we would deliver things in a way where he felt like he was still in control of the conversation, just to get the most out of him. So yeah, we were thinking that. We Sorry, my notes are scribbled. Also in the intake, we were thinking about, what is he willing to do? Finding out what is he willing to do to make this work. What his ideas, his thoughts on what he thought he could do to help improve the situation. We were also talking about, so this kind of falls in intake and in assessment, we thought, talking about what's driving him to continue to breach.
Okay.
Like what's driving him to do it, hard not knowing what his answers are going to be. So then through the assessment part, we were thinking of bringing up, so what's happened to you? How you like to say, what's happened to you? Try and find out a little bit about his history, the way he grew up, those sorts of things, to see if that has anything to do with his behavior, just to note it. So yeah, definitely focusing on his part. Those kinds of things. This is just about the dad for the assessment part. For the child, it's the same thing. We were talking about, so it's been 21 years of domestic violence. The daughter's 22, so it happened after she was born. And we know that children feel it from the womb. So we were acknowledging that all the children, especially the 16-year-old, this started in the womb for him. So, that we assess that just on science. Then we thought with the young one, also want to check that he's safe. Try and talk about ways, things that are happening in his life, if he's fed, if he's got the roof over his head, those sorts of things. Has he got a bed to sleep in? All of those basic needs in the house. Do they fight, sort of thing? Are they finding like home life's tough? Is there a lot of tension? And also asking him, what's happened to you, sort of things, those kind of things. And so the assessment part is definitely talking about how he's feeling, how all of this makes him feel. It's hard because we don't know the full story, but we do want to know his feelings towards mum and those kinds of things. The priority for him is definitely, does he have a bed at home? Is he getting all of his meals? Does he feel safe? Is he going to school? Is he feeling quite stable? Does he know what he wants to do with his life? Because he's at that age, is he looking at getting his driver's license? He's doing 16-year-old boy things. And yeah, under the assessment part, we were talking about referring, suggesting and referring for mental health sort of assessments, obviously worded nicely, because I don't think this gentleman would take that very well. He may not, trying to keep our judgments out of it, but talking to him on his level, and suggest things, suggest anger management, suggest learning different ways of finding out how his family is doing. And it really goes back to, what are you willing to do to get your children back in your life?
That's
as far as we got.
Great intake assessment. I've got 2 questions. Who do you think is your primary client in this?
The 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Yes.
And at what risk have you placed him, low, medium, or high?
I would put the child at high risk from the history.
Okay, so what I heard from your group, that was excellent. So I liked your approach. You're absolutely right, non-judgmental. A lot of our work is with offenders,
Yes.
and we don't always get to work with someone and turn their lives around. We may be working with the person who, again, like the 16-year-old, to go from victim to offender. Yeah.
Yes.
And there's a lot of evidence-based data around that. So I like that you went through the genogram, you went in there as well, how far back you wanted to go. We don't need to know everything to do our
Mm,
work either. That's
mm,
another thing to hold on to, is your client, just because they walked in the door, may not tell you, or they'll
mm,
tell you the version of events that they want you to hear, rather than you hear that and then you come up with, oh, here's, bring my advice monster out now and I've got all the solutions for you. It's, I can work with someone for a decade, and the closest they will get will be, one day I'll tell you what happened to me, and
mm,
can I still do my body of work regardless? And of course I can, because why are they here? How much do they? So we need to work with our open-ended questions. The who, I've got that. The what, I've got that. The why, I've got that. The how, and the when, I've got all of that in your intake and assessment without fully going into that story, and you had nobody to check whether that was correct. You were testing their readiness and their motivation for change if change is what they wanted. You went back into their history. You did apply that non-judgmental lens, which we need to, and the unconditional compassionate regard. That was extremely important, and I felt that coming through from your summary. I liked, what were the aims for the son, and also that you place him at high risk. I'm thinking you will pose certain questions to him while the father is there, and perhaps different questions if you do get that opportunity. The father may not let you do that for some time, but you pick that up anyway. He's a person who may want to be in full control, so the idea has to come from them, or the
yeah.
consent. Now, the young boy, this is happening now, so this is a current caseload I'm working on. The young boy is not placed with the father because the federal court and the state protection order is up until the 18 years of age. But the hope that he will go and live with his father is there, but the father's wife is, he is absolutely not living with us. So there's another bridge to cross for that young boy, that I've left home, I've done everything you've asked of me, and what I still can't come home. Was that his motivation to get that reunification with his son, or was it just to remove the son out of the way and the care of the mother? And we don't know that. And for this exercise, intake assessment and priority of needs, you did not need to know any of that. So well
Mm.
done. Can I
Thanks.
just hear from someone in that group how that felt for you? Ricky, I don't want to put a spotlight on you, but you were in Maria's group. How did you feel in that space? What did you think coming out of a breakout room?
Um, it was great to see them sort of flow through it. I suppose when I was referring to wanting more information, I feel like I was attempting to carry something out though without being really clear, even though what my role is. So like we're
Mm.
talking about intake, I wasn't sure what that referred to, but now looking at the who, what, how, and why, and trying to figure that out, looking at assessing readiness and motivation and things like this. I just felt like I wasn't sure what I was even trying to pull out of this. Do we say client or do we say person we work with? What's the right word?
Yeah, you can say client.
You can say client. Yes, I
Depends who
suppose
we
that's
work
why I
for.
was just struggling to have clarity on. I suppose maybe because I come from a clinical background, I'm used to frame of references, I'm used to procedures, I'm used to templates, and we follow through in a certain order. This is what we assess. This is what we look at impacting. This is how. So I think maybe it's going to take a bit of getting used to that side of things, but it was good to see them pick it apart. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. We because we're often frontline workers, we don't have that luxury. We do have templates and we will do that. But if we don't have engagement, we can't get trust. And if they don't trust us, they won't work with us. So even if someone's mandated to come and see us, it's like, well, I'm here, but I'm not going to participate. And you as a worker will say, that's fine. And thank you very much for coming in. And I will definitely note that you did turn up. However, I will also note that you did not engage in the process. So we talk about that when we're with our clients, but intake and assessment is, we need to find out what brought you in through the door today.
Okay, so like for me, if like as an occupational therapist, when I was in that, had that hat on, like I could say my goal would be to increase their occupational performance in whatever it is that they say is important. What is the primary role that I would be looking to achieve is working with this person? What is
so you're the lead worker, and what you'll do is you'll establish, and it's our next step, you'll establish what we call an alliance circle. And who do we refer out to? So an OT may be, if they're an NDIS recipient, we may consider if they've got a plan, have they got an OT? If not, can we have a look at having that assessment done about their eligibility and supports? It might be we refer them to a trauma counsellor. So we then look after the client, the primary client, and then they come in and they check in with us. They work with us and establish a relationship. It's a very holistic approach that we have, but we also document, we formalize our process. You do have templates. You've got to be able to do a client individual support plan. You've got to be able to get consent forms signed. You've got to be able to do referrals, but we're the ones who refer out. And you're in your clinical space, someone has referred to you. But we determine with the client, what is it that you're looking for? And that might take 2 or 3 visits before we even get there.
thank you.
So the most important thing to do in that process is engagement, establish trust, let them do 60% of the talking, apply intentional interviewing questions to get that information Maria just pulled out from your group, which I'm sure you all collaborated and had input. I heard the elements as a safety plan on its way with Maria's. I'm thinking I'm knowing where she's going to go next, but I'm trying not to rush ahead because right now it's about, will they work with us? And they will not do another thing with us if there is no trust. Not a thing.
Yeah, that's it. Rapport building is the way they start to talk to you. So that first initial intake can be solely on rapport building, and then they come back and they will slowly open up. Sometimes it can take months. It can take weeks. But you will get there if you build that rapport and trust with the non-judgmental approach.
Don't rush it. I mean, if you're in a model, like Shannon, who's not on screen at the moment, but with Shannon, in part of the organization she works in, you get 6 sessions. So you kind of, it is a bit of speed dating going on a little bit, because it's like rapport, quick. Okay, second one, rapport, still there. Are we connecting? So you've got to have a framework. You're right, Ricky, and we do. But right now, if they don't want to work with you, it wouldn't matter how many templates that you start filling in. You've got nothing. They'll only give you lip service, give you what they think you want to hear. And that may be okay as well, because this is about that unconditional regard for our clients. So father-son coming into the building, maybe whatever their motivation is around that, what they tell us and what you sense could be 2 different things. But we still acknowledge and believe our client, their perception around what is happening for them. It is not a place to challenge. There is a place to confront when we're working with people longer term, but certainly not at this stage. And that might be if someone goes, well, I'm no good at something. We might go, well, I actually want to pick you up on that, because look at how far you've come when we first started working, and let's flick back and have a look at what our goals were and look at what you've done. And so we may challenge them like that, but that would be their only challenge area. The only time that you would ever put a really definite, strong stop go boundary, and we have stop goes when we're frontline workers, is if you were at risk or someone else was at risk, straight up. And you're the professional, you've got to make that judgment call. Report it to your line manager, document that, give it another action step outside of the discussion you're having with them. If you've got a thought and it's sitting with you more than 30 minutes after they've walked out of the building, you need to check in with your line manager. Something's a little off here, I'm not quite sure. That's fine, Ella, that's great. I'll send recording. Thank you. Can I, Hakan, you had your hand up. Can I just circle to you and then we'll do our other room?
I was going to ask how much time do we have to work with, individuals, but right as I put my hand up, you said 6 weeks, and
Sometimes it depends on the service model. I'm still working with people a decade later. It's driven by the client in a community setting if there is no stop and go, but depends on your program. Your service model might say you get 6 weeks.
yeah.
So
Or you build trust with him and he requests you, that's where the trust and the rapport building comes in.
Yeah, if the funding says that they can apply for additional, so under Better Outcomes, Better Health, the mental health space under Medicare, you can have 6 free sessions, and then you can go back to your GP and ask for an additional 6. But that's over a period of 12 months, 6 months, 6 sessions. So if you have got enough out of it, if the client's got enough out of it, it's like, no, look, I'm good. I'll save it if I need to. I know what I've got to do. That's great. So when we only have a set number, then we have our intake, our assessment, and priority of needs. And then we start working on establishing what's some measurable goals, what's some realistic timeframes, how are we going to approach, and who else are we going to bring into this around the alliance circle, that wraparound support. And then we have to start getting ready for our exit week 5 and week 6, or session 5 and session 6. So you need to manage your delivery around this within the scope of your role, what you can do, and to make sure that you've got a check-in. You may have some wiggle room with your program to do a follow-up 6 month. We're just checking in to see how everything is going. But we want to leave them with, how to contact us if anything changes at all. So we're giving them the resources and the tools to be able to initiate this. You may get to work with a client once only and then they leave town. So we have to make every session meaningful. So it must have an intake, an assessment, and what's the priority of need for today. Because you may never see them again.
What happens in that one session if they don't say anything? If there is they just don't want to talk to you, they don't want to cooperate, they don't want to relieve anything. What happens in that first session and then not seeing them again?
Well, we respect that.
Yeah. Just sort of note down what happened in the meeting, and that's it. It was uncooperative, didn't want to talk. We didn't get much out of it.
Not so much uncooperative. My wording might say closed.
Closed, yep.
Okay.
Not in the right space to engage.
Yeah. You may be the wrong worker for them.
Yeah.
We don't know. So they're the ones that are driving this space. We follow our model. We work within the scope of our role. If they're not engaging, there may be a very good reason unknown to us for that. They may have had really bad experiences in the past. That's not our space. We're trying to make a connection here so that they will want to work with us or another person so they get the support that they need. And if it's in this postcode, in this moment of time, great. If it's not, then we try and make that the most positive experience, that they go, you know what, that wasn't too bad. They seem pretty good. They may get more out of it than what you think it can.
Yeah.
And so then they go, oh, the timing's not right, or I think I want a female worker, I think I want a male worker, or, you know, I think I want a First Nation worker, or it's not really for me. Lots of young people interview the psych, I can tell you. And we'll shop around until they get the right person as well. So it's got to be a good fit for them. And just because they walk in the door, under no circumstances must they say anything at all to us, even if it's mandated. I've had people come in, just sit for the full 30 minutes on a couch with a fluffy cushion, and they pick the chair and it's like, so we just sit.
Yep.
I might get water. We might do some colouring in. As an ND, I've always got some really cool gadgets floating around. I've got my sandbox, colouring in. Yeah, we just talk about lots of other things. We don't have to talk about that thing. What would you like to get most out of today with our time together? Come out of service, unconditional regard for where they are, how they present. Okay.
Thank you.
So, and then the next time it could be completely different. Don't think that it builds on. It could be 3 steps forwards and 10 back. Life is happening to them outside. We are in the meantime, people. Okay, great. All right. So can I go to the other room, Zoe, and let's talk about the mother. How did you go?
Yep. So we had, yeah, we did great. We got some good discussion happening. So we obviously had the mother, and we spoke about her. And first off, that we wanted to reassure her that we were there for her, that everything else at the moment didn't matter. It was for her to tell us what she wanted or what she needed, and why she'd come to us. So we sort of got an idea of how she presented herself. We discussed how she seemed a bit scared and hesitant to engage in services, feeling let down in the past. We gathered that she was exhausted, that this had gone on for so long and so much had stood in her way, gaining support and access. So that's where she was a bit hesitant. So then we spoke about that. First off, we asked about, you know, current orders and the children and who's with her, who's not with her, and how the relationships with those children are, the ones that do have contact with the father, the ones that don't, and then these new children with the new partner. Then we sort of talked about how she was still feeling quite intimidated by him and threatened, and that her safety seemed to be of the highest priority at that point in time, the safety of herself and the safety of her children. So then we also talked a bit more on that. So she felt guilt over the children, and then fear for the children and herself, all within the same sort of context. And then we thought we might ask for a bit more information from her, as in what was working for her at the moment, who was there to support her in her current circumstance, if there was a safety plan in place, if she had doctor's help or counselling services, just to get a bit more of where she needed us specifically. We thought we needed a bit more info on the family dynamics, and then delved a bit more into the the 3 other children and any sort of vicarious trauma that they may be experiencing in the situation, even though they didn't go through the years of it, they're still in a situation where it's happening. So we said we'd speak about the new relationship and if that was safe, if that was a comfort, and where the support needed to fit in with that. We spoke about how we would work for her in finding out and researching into new agencies and new referral systems that she had not dealt with in the past, because of that big feeling of being let down, and people had failed her through and through for the last 20 odd years. So we made sure that we would do some more research for her to find out ones that may be out of the postcode that she's currently in, but would she be willing to refer out to other services that are do not have any bias or do not have any influence from the ex and the case and everything, because he seemed to have had his hands in so many different areas and it had an influence over so many different things. We thought maybe we could remove all of that influence by looking further afield for any services that she might feel she needed at that present time. So we sort of just thought that her current need, her current priority was the safety to be shielded or to just be away from the constant stalking and intimidation and the threatening. Even though he's not threatening, he's just the presence of him being there is threatening, and the safety of the kids to be removed from that situation. What else did we have? I think that sort of sums it up. We were very overwhelmed by the complexity of it.
It is very high and complex need, post-traumatic stress disorder, some intergenerational stuff there going on. There's housing, there's mental health, there's domestic family violence, and
that was another thing.
Current.
Yeah, we talked about, is she still in the house where all this happened? That was another bit of more info, because that is another big trauma.
It's a trigger
place, I guess. It's a trigger. So we just wanted to know we were there for her, working for her, to make sure that she felt comfortable in the space, but to also get more info from her. But we did recognize she was still high risk, and she presented very vulnerable, hesitant, and sort of standoffish to obtaining services.
Yeah, that's great. That's very similar approach. All the safety. Can I get from your group low, medium, or high risk?
Oh, we said high risk.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And what do you think her priority of needs was when you were discussing this? What would be initially? You've just met her. You're doing intake assessment. What did you sense were the priority of needs? Perhaps hers, and then maybe even yours as a worker. They can be the same thing, but different.
We thought the priority of her needs was her mental health and safety for both the children and herself.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So you've looked at all of those aspects. It is a very high and complex need client, but it's also something that you may deal with. If you've got 5 clients back to back, it could be 3 of your clients that same day with a lot of the same presenting issues, different story, but we don't work with the story. We work with how are they presenting, what is it we are going to be able to do today, and where do we need to be. And the next step, of course, is moving on to those external supports. So I want everyone to take a break. I want you to jump back in again. We'll be back here at 8 p.m. What I want to do is show you how we would start setting up the Alliance Circle. Who are we going to put as wraparound supports now for each of those people? And it'll be very similar. So I just want to give you some feedback. That was excellent. You're looking at the psychache. And when we come back, I want you to share with me, what was your dilemma with this story? You as an individual, what were you struggling with as a worker, whether regardless of what room you were in when you've heard this come back as a group? I'll be interested and curious what you've got to say. So I'll see you back at 8. Please take 5 minutes, get up, stretch, hydrate, shake it off, have something to eat if you must. If you need to eat when you come back on camera, just turn the camera off. And Jo, when we come back, I'm going to ask you your thoughts. Okay.
Yeah.
So welcome back. We're just had a brief break, and I've thrown it over to Jo, who sat in the group, one group with the mother, and we've had the summary based on that. But the thought was around, and I did want to, when we all came back, I wanted to hear what the dilemma ethical was for each of us sitting in this space. So Jo, would you like to share on your thoughts around had you been in either group, or where you would like to be sitting as a worker?
Okay, so I just had a dilemma with the father of if there is obviously a current order in place preventing the father from having contact with his children until they are all of the age of 18. He currently has a new relationship with children. Why there isn't an order in place on those children? That's my dilemma.
Yep, it was my dilemma as well. So the process, the framework we can work to is, who do we report that to? We take that to child safety. The mother's sister is a senior officer in child safety, does the assessments.
Yeah,
So you've got to declare a conflict of interest based on what? Then you've got to be able to take that outside of the area. I think Maria's group had said, take it out, take it to a different area, speak to a different person. The mother cannot do that on her own behalf. This is where your worker comes in and does the advocacy.
Yeah. But
yeah.
That person should be blocked from having access to that case.
Mm. So interestingly, the father and the mother's father went to court and supported the father, which is another whole message for that mother. And so they lodged an application with the court to be removed off the protection order. They did that in December, and then court went on break. They came back in January, and I said to the mother, you must attend court. You can't not attend the court. And they are turning 18 in August. So you have to, in good faith, turn up to court when you're required to. The police served the order. She called me because I'm her advocate while the police were there, and the police got it wrong. They made an error because the son has the same first name as the father, and they said he has. So the police came in and served it and said he has asked to be removed from the protection order, and she just didn't understand, so triggered. She said, I need my advocate on the phone. So we're talking, and the police officer saying, I'm here because of this. And I just said, could you read that again? Because there is no way in the world that slipped through your processes if you're coming here and serving it. Can you go back and look at the documentation, and can you read that out? And as it turned out, it was the 16-year-old boy. Yeah. Well, he's 17 now. So so it's the 17-year-old boy that made the application. They just missed it. And she said, well, either way, I still have to serve you. And I said, and now we need to book her in with her trauma counsellor because of what you just said and how you missed that when you served that that on her.
Yeah. So are we talking about child protection?
That was Queensland Police. No,
Yeah.
Child Protection have no orders at all over any of the children.
That I don't understand.
I know. So did I report? Yes, I did. I reported to the minister that there were persons, and I gave those names to the minister and said, you've got a child safety officer by this name based in Ipswich who is driving that person named on the protection order, both federal court, family court and the state, and that order is still in place, taking that young person and driving them to that named person's place, the residence. And you've got a local person who is working for child safety, and they have taken that child and placed them in their own home and assisted that child go through Centrelink, the unreasonable to live at home, and the social workers doing the intake process and everything. So really, without you as a worker advocating in that space for the mother and the child, both of them being the primary clients, depending on who we're working with at that time, and then assisting the father within the scope of the role. And if you are a mandatory reporting organisation, if that child is under the age of 18, if there are other children in that person's care, you can ask for a visit, and which I did.
This is why I left child protection.
Yep.
And this is why I wrote my report, and this is why I'm now studying to do a diploma in community, youth work.
Yeah. So the community sector has a lot more flexibility to be able to jump into that space and work with it.
Yeah.
As well. But the father, you've got to read the room as a worker. You've got to go, I've got the father and the son, but you correctly identified that the son is the primary client there. And the father, I've given you some information, but your gut may have brought up a couple of little, I need to check that further, but we have no control over their intentions. So this could be the moment that they've had their aha, and I really want to turn this around. What does that look like? What would I need to do? What can I do within the orders that sit in place now? So
I can't believe he hasn't gone to jail, the father.
Well, if you've got a character reference from the ex-police minister who was currently the local mayor at the time, that's pretty heavy hitting. And what did she have? She was his wife. That's it. So the belief that you have an imbalance of power without you being in that space as a worker to advocate on their behalf, these are the suicides. These are the mental health breakdowns never to recover. These are that perpetuating from victim to offender. This is the space that you're working in. And then you need to establish really good seamless referral pathways with other workers. So there's a domestic family violence organisation, Tier 1. So they work very closely with the police, and they provide the trauma counselling under domestic family violence. But there's more than that there, isn't there? There's intergenerational trauma. There's an existing trauma. There is, I'm hearing the dilemma around the housing. I wondered if anyone would pick that up. My dilemma when I first started working with the client was, why don't you just leave town? But in her mind, and I also picked up as well about, is she still in the family home? Because to me, that's the scene of the crime. So every door that slams, every raised voice re-traumatizes the children again. So for her, it was a real victory to keep the family home. She put her heart and soul into that. She paid those payments. It was as challenged as it was. We went through all of the court, the family court, we went through the criminal courts, and then she needed an advocate to be able to go to the bank on a single parent payment and convince them to be able to give her a loan in her name. So we did that. She now has the house. But all of this is over 6 years. I want to let you know. The reason why we had leverage, there's hardship. So a lot of those corporations, if you don't know, you need to learn. I'm going to ask you to have a portfolio by the time we're finished these 2 units of who do you go to? Who do you wrap around supports with your client? So do you know that the banks have a hardship policy? Do you know the banks will listen case by case around debts and loans and forgive them? Do you know that when you go to the local council, because the house was not in her name, but the debt was, he also forged her signature and took out an additional loan on top of that. And but because the house was in his name, she was not allowed to pay the rates. So then they took him to court and nothing happened about the rates arrears. Then they took her to court the moment the house was put into her name, and they went after her to sell the property. So that was another court case as well. So if you could think of the ongoing support that you need to do with somebody in that space and what is the priority of need. It is about relationship building. It's about working out what do we need to do today? What would you like most to have at the moment? And try not to have them too far in the future and just deal with what it is today, what we can do, what is within our control and theirs. And then we look at the bigger picture. So right now, today, we can do this. What are some of those timelines coming up? We spoke about the court order, or are there any other orders? She had, she had deadlines turning up where they were getting ready to take the house. There was a lot of things. That's the whole idea. It's quite a coordinated approach and an attack. There was a lot of time to think about this as well, whereas she was just in recovery. Any quiet moments in between was never really completely safe, and you all came back with that safety plan around her. Dealing with letting things go because it may not be okay for you at the moment. How do you provide support? She had lots of stops and starts. Oh, well, they've come back into the home, so I'm just there. And a very dedicated, devoted mother who risked her life for her children and would still do that. That is her priority. But working with her to, what does it look like if they don't come back home? How do you feel as a mother? What does that look like for the father? How does that feel having a connection with your son, even though the orders are there? Well, it's not for long, and so he can't come and stay with us. How far did the father move? 15 minutes. And can park within 100 metres +1 in the same street, but uses different people's cars to do it. So that's why the family court said this can't be workshopped out. He was sent to a workshop with the first order. The program's called Man in the Mirror. He ran the class because that's his skill. The best I could do is get his working with children check removed. Does he still work with children? Ricky, workshopping means go to programs, work with people, and psychologist, psychiatrist, family specialist can't be workshopped out. that a clinical psychiatrist and a criminal psychologist both gave that report in the family court. This is a person that we can't work with and turn it around. If it did, it would take a full lifetime and unlikely. They have to give that view to the judge so they can take those things into consideration. Because when you go to family court, it isn't about the mother or the father. And a lot of people get very confused there. And you've got to tell your clients and work with them. It is about the child's right to have a relationship with both parents if it is safe to do so. And you can't go to family court and make outrageous claims, vexatious claims. Family court have very limited tolerance listening to those stories, even though history and patterns and criminal charges should be considered. The court is there for the child's right to have a relationship with both parents if it is safe to do so. It's your job to help them find the right referrals to the right legal advice and the funding to be able to do that. So on average, it is $68,500 to go to family court and fight if someone can't be in a certificate. Even child support was never paid because Centrelink made the decision it was unsafe for the mother to be in receipt of that. That would be a power imbalance and ongoing connection. And but that took a lot of evidence to get around it, and the trauma counsellors had to provide that as well. So she managed without that, but he had not paid anything. When that was asked, and I don't want this to sound like I'm picking on the male, but let's just identify them as that parent happens to be. The judge said, well, why didn't you just put that money aside? Haven't you ever heard of a checking account? So the judge wanted to listen. He didn't go easy on the mother either, by the way, because there'd been some choices and decisions made, thinking it was for the protection of the children, but it denied the other parent's rights in that process. So you've got to be ready to work with the father and that son as much as you are ready to work with that mother as well. It depends on who your client is when they come in through the door. And for parity, the father was also entitled to get that $68,500 in funding for legal aid as well. Now that's rare, but because we'd been able to get it for the mother, he put in an application that he should be able to have equity in that space. So that application was approved. Even though every previous court case, one of his gym members is a barrister and they represented him at no fee. So, and I'm not even telling you 80% of this, I'm just giving you the tip. But this is your client work that you've got to do. So, Ricky, you might refer someone out to a program, and rightly the father was referred to a program. The court ordered that you will go and do these programs. But when the feedback came back, because they knew the person who was running the local programs, there was no strength around saying, and that program will happen in a different location. It should have been. It was not. But you've got to work with what you've got in front of you. So he ended up half running the program for the other fathers that were sent there. So so it didn't have the impact. He didn't go with the intention to have that reflection. This is my moment, if ever. Can I say also that the mother in the beginning definitely wanted the father to have a relationship with her children if it was safe to do so. She would have loved nothing more, and still would love nothing more, for them to have a great relationship with the parent, with both parents, but it is unsafe. She felt it was, but every time she tried to raise it, the police would say, we can't keep turning up here because of your mental health issues. So when someone's in full flight meltdown, trauma impacted and triggered, they often aren't clear when the police turn up, they are in huge distress, and it's so when the police start asking questions, they find it very difficult to regulate, to be able to be calm in that space. It took a long time, but that's your work to do with a client going through that. What can we do to prepare you for each time? Who else could you call? Who do you need to have around you? She had very good neighbours, by the way, but even when neighbours were witness to it and offered to give statements, the police would not take them because they go to his gym and they're his friends. And even if I could get them to make a charge, like lay a charge, it wouldn't make it to court because they would say it's not in the public interest. So I believe they should all go to the court. There's more to it, and I will definitely be weaving them in and out. It isn't in your assessment, but these micro skills 100% are. So it's good to give you something really complex to chew on, knowing that your assessment work is going to be a lot easier than this one. But I still want to give you a hard case for the next 6 weeks, next 5, to make sure that I've got you working really hard. Like if you can wrap your head around a very high and complex need the whole way through, then that is a case, would be the hardest one, likely, that you would come across. So we'll unpack a really tough one as us in our class, but your assessment work will take you to places like this. Let me just share this page for us so I can show you. How we're going to set out. Okay, so the units are combined, CHCCCS007 and CHCDEV005. It's clustered for 6 weeks. 100 hours of this is dedicated to work placement. You do 3 assessment tasks. So when I show you this, and I'll follow that up with our recording, but task 1 is knowledge questions. It's a quiz. Task 2 is doing a project. And then task 3 is a role play, and it has part A and part B, and it's to assess issues and determine a plan with a client. Task 2 is the social and cultural issues within Australia. Trending is mental health, AOD, domestic family violence, housing, homelessness. The majority of our work sits in that space. Now, yes, this is youth work, but we don't separate young people from the family unit, because we are the worker, and that young person will always be driven by who am I and where do I fit in? How did that father have such power, that parent have such power over that child? He'd been physically assaulted all of his life by that father, and violently, and whose love did he want more than anything was that person. So that's why the attraction is very strong, and why a young person wants to hear from that person that I am not a bad kid and you do love me, even though they've been hurt all of their life, pre-birth, that was different. So task 4 and task 5, so there's 5 assessment tasks, they are done in the work placement. So it is develop, implement and evaluate a service program, and it'll be based on client scenarios and what you're doing in the workplace. And then task 5 is analyze the impact of the services, parts A and C, and that is, did this go well? Was it effective? What kind of timeline would we need to be working with the client to make that happen? And then we're going to move over. We give you a simulated workplace environment, and the organisation, hypothetically, that you're working in is called First Access. And there's all the resources that you need, and there's a login, and your assessment, extra documents, referrals, consent, case plans, even email templates. All of that is sitting inside your First Access portal, as are all the policies and procedures based around the legislation and the Act. Everything that you need if you were a worker, even if you are a worker, First Access becomes your new organisation. All of your assessments are based around First Access. Your role plays, you will be taking on the role of a staff member at First Access. You may be the senior counsellor, you may be the youth worker, you may be the in-house nurse on site, not clinical work, but definitely around that first responding medical first aid, especially if there's an incident to report and filling that in. So we give you lots of opportunities to take on different roles and different client scenarios. And then in your instructions, in your portal, it will give you the link to First Access. I'm sending out these slides for you as well, by the way, as the recording. You navigate that staff and the intranet, and you put in, you go onto this link, and your username is Hader Institute, and your password is Hader123456. Now, I encourage you to keep that into a folder, because you'll be in and out of there more than 100 times throughout your diploma. That's where all the information is coming from. That and your learner guide. So there's a learner guide for every single unit that you do. But there's still about 25% that you've got to go looking yourself, and that has to be evidence-based data, credible, reliable sources, and you must reference them as well if you're going to write about them, especially in this one. Task 2 is a project. So you'll go to the site, you'll find your policies and procedures. I recommend that you download those forms and save these into your own device to complete. I encourage everyone, when they start studying, to open up a folder and call it the name of your qualification, and then open up subfolders for each unit. When you get your learner's guide, download that and put it into that subfolder for these 2 units, this clustered one. Any of the case notes, it gives you the link how to go and get them, those templates. Save those and put those into that folder as well. You may even open up a folder called First Access, where you decide to put this information and some of the templates. You go, oh, I've used that one before, and you can circle back and go in there. It will save time. Try not to only see the First Access site as a place to get templates. Look at it from the website. If it was a client of yours and they wanted to research your organisation before they came in and spoke with you, it actually tells them everything about the work. It even nominates the name that you will be taking on that role in your role play. So get familiar with it. That's your new employer. So tonight, what we did cover was around our community capacity building would be our next step. So we would then refer out, we would share some information. First of all, we must capture that. Intake assessment, priority of needs gives us that. But of course, we had no client tonight. It was just case conferencing as workers. When you do have a client, then you need consent to share that. So you will engage other stakeholders who are better suited. Your website in First Access will tell you what you can do. It'll also give you the scope of the role that you work to. So if it's for some other service, you're not going to deliver that. That's not your role. Your role is to help your client engage with other stakeholders, and you are part of that whole journey with your client, a seamless referral pathway. If you make an appointment, you've got their consent, and the next time they speak to you, they say, look, if you say, how did that go? Look, I didn't go. Oh, tell me about that. That is our space. So what was happening for you? Look, I pulled up outside. I sat outside, but I just couldn't walk in the door. what would it be like if I came with you, even if I just sat in the weight room? Oh, would you? That'd be great. Then we are working with their need. It's not our job to talk them out of it or talk them into it. It is what would be most helpful for you. I just got stuck. I'm not good at accessing that. I don't know what to say to people. Our terminology is there is resistance or some stress around accessing mainstream services. Then we will consult with our client, and with their consent, we will consult with that stakeholder that we referred them to, but only the information that is relevant for that stakeholder and what the client agrees to, nothing about them without them. So what they share with that referral is entirely up to them. We do not and never do have consent to discuss the whole story unless the client has said, will you tell them everything? Or I only want to talk to them about this one thing. It might be housing, for example. It is their story, not ours to tell everything, only the thing that the client agrees with. So self-determination and dignity of risk, even if it's better for them if they do, it is still the client's decision. Then we utilize those resources and we work collaboratively with them, and we make sure that we support the stakeholders and we continue to support that client. And if they get stuck, we stay in that space till they feel unstuck. So I'll just do this bit here for us, and then I'll come back in. Okay, so your framework and guidelines for planning your work with your client is you must have any of the legal frameworks, and we start and end with that. Your duty of care, any mandatory reporting, Joe raised that. If you have children that are there with you, anyone under the age of 18, we need to be mindful of that, even though the guardian, so the parent that came in with the young boy that we spoke about is not actually the legal guardian. In fact, there's court orders to say the exact opposite. However, that's may not be information they share with you. I'm giving you the whole picture to speed that up a little bit for you. That's why we've got to go to that and what else. So we need to make sure that we've got enough intentional interviewing questions to do the risk assessment. Don't rush into solutions. Sit with that space, engage, work with that intake assessment and clarify. Human rights and needs of both in that risk minimisation, consent, privacy, confidentiality and disclosure. And then again, what are the legal frameworks? After that session, where do I go from there? So I'll continue recording for as well after we all jump out. But I'm going to pause now just for our own discussion. So welcome back, everybody. We've just done our wrap up and our discussion. Some of our discussion gets recorded because it's relevant to our learnings. The rest is about us in class. So we invite you, if you didn't come to class tonight and you are doing this unit, we encourage you to come to class on the nights that you can. We don't usually record our live classes because we do a pre-recording and we send that out as a standalone unit. But if you're ever looking for peers or you're looking for someone to do role plays with, this is really where you will get those connections as well. So let me move over to just a little bit more about this. I wanted to share these slides with you, and I'll also get them sent out for you as an attachment. Okay, so just onto our next slide. We went through what are the frameworks, guidelines for planning, duty of care, mandatory reporting, start with legal frameworks and finish with those. And this is our holistic approach, but it's also our mindset. So we look at what is it that we are primarily focusing on when a client comes and presents with their priority of needs. So tonight we focused on intake, assessment, and priority of needs. I gave you a scenario to work with, and we went into 2 breakout rooms, and we had the perspective of a father and a son and a mother, and their story, which that story sat around domestic family violence, mental health, post-traumatic stress disorder, and trauma-informed care. So CPTSD, that complex, consistent, persistent through the developmental years of that young person as well. And then we started to talk about what might be some of those external supports when we jump into our referring. So what are our supporting systems consist of? Alignment to the organisational requirements, which means what is the scope of my role? What can I do and what can I not do? If I'm employed to do something, and even if I did have those skills in the community sector, we cannot use them. So there's a protocol that we have to stay with. Unless it's inside the scope of your role, then you're working outside your employment contract. Now, they might find strength that you can do suicide intervention or you're a subject matter expert on certain areas, but it all comes down to your line manager, and they must have the proper protocols around that. If the funding does not fund you for that, you can't work outside the scope of that funding guideline either. So you have a performance framework and you have the service model. And so that's alignment to the organisational requirements. So the organisation answers to the funding body, and we answer to the organisation within the scope of our role. The lines and the limitations of our responsibilities, the organisational chart, who's who in the zoo and who do I report to and who reports to me, whether that's internal, and even when we're referring out, there's policies and procedures around how we do that, right down to what kind of an email can we send and how do we represent the organisation. So we must always remember we are working inside the professional guidelines, so the boundaries, your personality and your style inside those guidelines, amazing. Outside those guidelines, doesn't matter how good you are, you're working outside of the organisational guidelines, and that can be both legal and ethical matter. It can impact, and then responding to concerns and complaints. So if someone does make a complaint, let's say, for instance, we spoke about the father. Let's say the father felt that they weren't being supported by you as that worker, the group that had that, because they were looking for a different outcome than what they got or perceived they got. That's why it's very important that we make sure that we remember whoever is our client, regardless of the story around them, as long as you are safe, then our role is to work with everyone. So I like working in the very high and complex needs space, and I like working with repeat offenders because I know there's a story behind that, and usually that started when they were a young person. But I couldn't work with, say, the mother as well as the father. Obviously, that's a conflict of interest as well. So what does community capacity building mean to you? It says, how will I assist clients and how will it assist workers when we're making these connections, building and collaborating with our peers inside the organisation and also our referrals outside of the organisation as well. And then how will those relationships assist the organisation? So when we're working, we always have three lenses: the client's perspective, our perspective as a worker and our peers, and also the reputation of the organisation that we represent. Next week, I'm going to drop you into some breakout rooms, and we're going to do another extension of the scenario. And we're going to have a look at the three different lenses of each of those based on the scenario that I give you, which will be coming out of your assessments. And what's the wider local community where you live and work? And I want you to, when you're coming out of the breakout room, depending on which room you've been placed into next week, what would be a great referral for a client, what would be a great referral for a worker, and what would be a great referral for the organisation as well, and have a think about those. I'll unpack that a bit more for you next week, but we will have three different breakout rooms, three different perspectives to look at, and a summary from each, and then our collective wisdom that we will pull out of that space. In weeks 1 and 2, we will focus on community capacity building, which is next week. We start into that, and stakeholder engagement. That's where our focus will be. So we've connected with each other for week 1. You're going to get this recording where I'm touching on this, but I also wanted to just keep going and give you an overview about what do the other weeks look like for you. And keep in mind that you're doing 2 units at the same time. And for the 6 weeks, we're covering each of those units. They're not separate when it comes to assessment. When you're doing one assessment, it's actually going to be marked off in the other unit as well. Week 3 and 4, we're going to talk about what are the supports, the wraparound supports we refer to as alliance circles. And what are your local resources where you live, and what are the clients' resources? What can they do in the meantime? And from the organisation's perspective, again, what's our duty of care to the client, to yourself, to your peers, and to the organisation as well? And we're going to start talking about building your sector portfolio, which might be just a list of go-to places in your local area. Some might be national. So we have things like Lifeline 13, 11, 14. We have the First Nation Torres Strait Island 13 Yarn. We have Beyond Blue, but they also have YB Blue, which is the youth side of it. We have Black Dog. We have Are You OK? We have the Resilience Project. There's quite a few. And then, of course, we have our free call numbers, the 1-800 RESPECT. And then we also have places like Housing Crisis Line. So I'm going to ask you, what would you guide a client when they're leaving? What resources would you like to give them in the meantime when they're not with us as that worker, that they don't have to wait for us, that we're not establishing a codependency where there's an imbalance of power between I'm all-knowing and you are not. The main part of our work is to make sure that we resource our clients so that they have that information themselves, and then we help them build that resilience around being able to do that. But at the moment, they're with us because they require support, or someone has referred them because they think that support would be beneficial. So that's weeks 3 and 4. I want to remind you that we have a Monday public holiday in there for Easter Monday as well, the 21st, something to just remember. And I will just be really clear about dates and things like that for you coming forward. So what is our duty of care as sector workers? It is that we provide safe, supported and supervised always, and to our sector standards. What is best practice? So it needs to be accessible and appropriate environment, trained staff who apply professional standards of care, appropriate clearances like working with children, check NDIS if the vulnerable persons card, if that's what we need, and then our line managers who supervise us. What are the legal and ethical practices which overarch everything that we do, and then working to the scope of our own role, qualifications and the currency of our knowledge. So you may be an entry-level worker, you may be an existing worker, or you might be looking at doing youth work because you want to go into that subject matter expertise. As an SME, you may build on what you've already got, but you want to really focus on this target group, this cohort. A young person in the sector is from 12 to 24 years of age. However, we do go earlier, early intervention. So that's from usually after 9, so 10 right through. And then we can go up to 35 years of age or 34, which is that gen. And we can often be working with young parents as well. So when I'm working with that age group up to 34, often the challenges that they experience are because they don't have those coping mechanisms, or their least developed part of their personality. When we're stressed, we revert to that. So if there's unresolved issues, it may very well be that injured young person who has still got unresolved issues, and it starts to pop up and appear in their relationships with themselves, their relationship with other people in the workplace. So even though it may be in the past, we know that body keeps score, and we know that that trauma is an injury and it requires treatment and a therapeutic framework around that. Oh, I went too fast, sorry. Weeks 5 and 6 role plays, 2 parts to that, 1 role play, task 3. And portfolio presentations, I'm going to be looking for those in week 5 and 6. I want to hear what it is that you have been able to discover in your local area, and then we'll do the role plays, because in your role play you may want to refer to one of those rather than think, oh, I don't know who to refer to. You will know because you'll have done that research. And then work placements are task 4 and task 5. So task 3, we can actually do in classes if you're ready during our 5th and 6th week that we are doing this unit. If not, then you can observe. But I would encourage you, this is the journey that I want us to take on this clustered unit, and how we're going to be approaching this unit. At the end of the 6th week, we move into a brand new unit. And you've got time to be able to do this one. If a unit runs for 3 weeks, we usually say a good time frame is perhaps 3 weeks after we finish that unit. But keep in mind, we've already started another one. I do encourage you, week 1, do task 1. Week 2, start on task 2 or do task 2. Week 3, start on task 3 or do task 3. And then you are ready for the next unit and won't feel that overwhelm. But that depends on your availability of time. Not all of your learning and understanding will come from classes or from your learner's guide or from the recordings like I'm doing now and the pre-recording, but a combination of all of those, yes. A lot comes out of the rich discussion we have in classes because we have a really good mix of workers and the fresh lens over people who would like to do that work. there's room for everybody. You can be working in the sector a long time and completely miss that perspective that a brand new person who's never done this work can bring into that space. So we have to be very open. It isn't about, oh, I know I've got this one. It is about where do I sit with this one? What is my view around this? I've held this one, but is that actually working for me? Is that serving our clients? Has that impacted me on the places that I've worked as well? So we'll cover the full journey from your perspective as a worker, from the lens as a client, and then also our responsibility we have for the organisation that we work with, where we have a contract. And which means that we have a responsibility to fill our side of that contract as well. Some frequently asked questions around clusters. I encourage you to have a study plan around that. I've given you an overview of how I will be delivering this. I often get asked about role plays and the written assessments. You have two types of assessments. You have key learnings, which is your knowledge evidence, and your practitioner skills, which is your role plays. You need both to be assessed to get your qualification diploma in youth work. What are the supports around learner support officers, and what support can you expect to get from myself? But we have other trainers and assessors that may have availability. It doesn't always have to only be with myself. You may enjoy working with some other trainers and assessors and book what we call an LSM, which is a learner support meeting. So we open up our calendar through Calendly, and learner support can guide you on that. But you can book in and have a look at who's got the earliest available. It might be that you email me and I've given you things and you're going, I still want that connection. I'll let you know when my earliest time is available, or you can look on our Calendly booking system. But there may be another trainer, both Cheyenne, CAYAN, and Dwayne both have excellent skills in this space. So I can highly recommend Cheyenne and Dwayne and myself. If you've got anything, please don't see it as I'm stuck or I've got to wait. Test if you can possibly get in with a trainer and assessor earlier, or reach out to me by email, and I'll let you know what I can do to assist. And then we did talk about 200 hours in our work placement. 100 of those is based on this clustered unit. So it's a big one, but it's also what I call the foundation to do this work. If we don't get this one right, we're not on solid ground going forward. So very important. And then, of course, can you RPL, which is recognition of prior learning. If you are already or recently have been a sector worker, you can. You may have done some units and want a credit transfer. You may want to have, if you're a sector worker, go, I don't really need the skills. I might do one or two, but I'd like to go through my list and go, I think I'd like to RPL my role plays, or I think I'd like to RPL my work placement. But if you're doing this and all you need is that piece of paper, that may be a great option for you. If you go, you know what, I want to revisit a couple of others and I'd like to do that as a refresher, even professional development, then go through and have a look at which ones you would like to do. Select your units. When you enrolled, we gave you the full list of your core units and your electives that you're going to do. So do a bit of research and let me know if that you did want to. The first step in applying for recognition of prior learning is you ask the learner support officers for, you put in an expression of interest form, and they will send that out to you and it'll tell you what is involved, and then it gets looked at and then we give you feedback if you are eligible and a suitable candidate for that. How do you get hold of everyone? If you want to book in a role play or book in any meeting, you go to this link. This is the link for you, or you can email lso@haderinstitute.edu.au. When you click on this, that will take you, when you get your size, that will take you through to our learner support officers, but that is their email there. And of course, mine is viki@haderinstitute.edu.au. So that's my contact there. For some reason, I don't know why it doesn't have my email address on that signature bit there, but learners who are your wraparound supports, myself as your trainer assessor for this, and as the program manager for all the trainers, and learner support officers, LSOs, we fondly call them, are an amazing group of people, but they are very busy. So if there is a delay, I like email, and then if you haven't heard back, let me know and I will escalate that for you. And then Discord is an app that we have. You can ask the LSO team, and the Discord app takes you into lots of different people doing qualifications who are always looking for someone to play the client or offering to play the client for someone in a role play. And it's broken down into the qualification, but jump around in the others. You'll see that AOD, mental health, community services, and youth work often share a lot of the same role plays because they are core units across every qual. So jump over into those places as well. They'll give you our HADER link for Discord, or you can email me and I'll send that to you. I want to say thank you very much for tonight. This is just a summary slide. We actually have a full suite of them, and I will be doing a recording which you will have before next Monday, and then the Monday after, of course, is a public holiday. Then we're back in class, and the Monday after that is that one is actually a public holiday in Queensland. So I'm not sure if I've got someone who will step in and do that class for you, a different trainer and assessor that night. I will leave that. Otherwise, I'll do a recording for everyone, and it'll be based on your feedback from our live classes as well. So I will stop sharing. And I think I have got, yep, I'm back on screen. So there's learner supports email there, lso@haderinstitute.edu.au. And I'm going to just give you a bit of a walkthrough on the assessments that I spoke about in the preview around that. But I'm going to send that out to you as a separate one that comes out. This is about the overview, and then I'm going to do a brief recording for you specifically around assessments to help you with this unit as well. So you'll get 2 recordings, part 1 and part 2. Okay, so hope you find that helpful. If ever you, as a live class, if I say to you I'm going to be doing some recording, you'll always get that recording as well. Not every class do we record, sometimes we speak freely. However, if you would like that and you think that's beneficial, I'm very happy to do that for the class, and we'll decide from there. It'll be done in collaboration with you all. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. This is going to be part 2. This part is going to be focusing on your assessments. So the assessments are initially task 1, 2, and 3 for 007, task 1, 2, and 3 for 005. Let's begin. Apologies, just finding that for everybody. Okay. So my porthole here will, of course, look different to yours. You're working with the student one, which is yours. And I'm working in that spaces where assessors are. So with assessments, we have CHCCCS007, 3 separate tasks attached to that, and 005, 3 separate tasks attached to that as well, broken down in our section. So I just wanted to show you a couple. With task 1, question 1, it says the following are different processes undertaken in the development and implementation of service programs in the community service sector. It says briefly describe each process. So in the first one, it asks about program design, program resourcing, implementing systems and procedures, getting feedback, complaints procedures, evaluation, continuous improvement, accountability, governance, funding. All of those they want you to answer. So what I thought I would do is just select a couple of these to be able to give you some guidance of how much of an answer they want and what must actually be in there, just as a stepping off for you. So we'll pick, we pick the program design as one, and we'll go to implementing systems and policies and procedures as assisting you with these ones. So with program design, you'll find your responses in your learner's guide, chapter 2, subchapter 25 and 2.6, just to give you an idea on what you're looking for. And program design, this is what we must see is, and words to this effect. Of course, you can't take these and copy exactly, and our system will pick all of that up. But under program design, they're looking for your description and words to this effect. This involves the careful planning and documentation of processes needed to develop and implement service programs. So that's what program design is. It's the planning, the creating and design, and how are you going to develop and then roll that out as a program. That's what program design is, and it wants you to answer that. That in one sentence is sufficient. With the, I've got the program resourcing there, so you can see that one, but with 3, implementation systems and procedures, it is the process of putting the program plan into effect. So you don't overthink this. Our task 1s are usually quizzes, and they're meant for brief responses. Do you understand what they're looking at here? So let's select another one here. I'll go down to question 11. So here it's got to answer the following questions about funding framework principles. So that goes to the scope of the role we spoke about tonight, what the funding says we can and cannot do. It might say we can only work with someone for 6 sessions. So that sits around this one, the funding framework principles, including not-for-profit and government funding programs as well. So what's different between the government and non-government? Here it's got, what is the value of having a funding framework in place? And it says here there's no limits to that question. Let's go down and for all of those questions, and I will guide you with number 1. And number 1, this question when we get to 11 is, what is the value of having a funding framework in place? It says you must. So whenever we're marking, and if we see that word there, must, know that if you haven't got that in your answer, then it will go back and someone might say, good start, we're looking for more, think about. So I wanted to just give you an overview of what that might be like. For a satisfactory performance, although the wording may slightly vary, it says you must be consistent with the benchmark answer below. So it's not word for word, but it's your interpretation of this. So the underlined words, though, or responses close to them, must appear in your response. So I have to see the funding framework outlines the parameters of what funds are available. So where does that come from? What's the purpose of that funding? And how they have been distributed across the service program. How did you spend that public funding? A funding framework also provides clarity around where funds have been allocated, so it makes it easy to track expenditure. That ends up being your performance report. So we have a performance framework or a funded framework, and then we have the performance of that and a report that goes back. So I hope you find that just explains that a little bit better for you. Let's just do the next one. In question 11, it says, explain the importance of clear communication when there is more than one organisation affiliated with the service program, meaning we might bring in other agencies and other workers. So it says you must explain the importance of clear communication when there is more than one organisation affiliated with the service. So that's our alliance circle, our wraparound supports. For a satisfactory performance, although you may change your wording, it's similar responses. A key consideration for the internal service provider, that's you as that lead agency, is that any external services that we engage in for our clients with are in line with our organisation's purpose, values and delivery standards. This is achieved through clear communication as it forms the basis of a cohesive working relationship between parties. So some of these can be formal, just an agreement, and you meet and you document, you keep minutes. Others might be formal, where it's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, which clearly outlines we will do this, you will do that, and if we hit a bit of a barrier, how we will resolve that barrier and who are the delegated people to do that. So tonight we spoke a little bit about advocates. An advocacy role is you can move amongst all of those areas. However, you are representing the first party, which is the client. That is separate to support work. Support worker can, provided we have consent, start negotiating, mapping, planning, putting things in place for the client that you've worked together to decide what might be, we've done the intake, we've done the assessment, what are the priority of needs now, how are we going to set that up and who else do we need in that picture? So community capacity building and collaboration, it's the backbone of the community sector. Work cannot do it on our own, nor would we be wanting to think that our client thought we were the only one with the answers, whereas that's not accurate. Connection to the wider community is extremely important in our work. save that. I've gone into so let me just have a look again. And 007. Let's have a look at task 2, which is going to be case studies. Let's just give us a brief preview. Let's see if they've done an overview for us. They may. Sometimes we have them, sometimes we don't. Okay, so let's just jump back. Sorry, let me. So we'll go back to task 2. Case studies, and this here is a, I'd say, written response, so a written assessment, whereas it's had a runtime error. See if I can get that back up again. Apologies. So like you, we navigate, accelerate as well. So here's our case study back again. So case study, how many have we got? We've got 2 case studies and scenarios. So this, of course, is all written. The first case study, let's have a look at Max. Max is a young man living in a youth hostel. He is not happy with his caseworker visiting on Thursday afternoons because he wants to go to footy training at this time. He doesn't know how to raise it with this caseworker, who is very busy and says she is only able to visit on Thursdays when she's in the area. Max takes part in a focus group, which has been set up by a project worker to gain feedback about the program that Max is in, where he raises the issue of the clash. Now, at this stage, the clash is about timing. You've got the workers' lens and their perspective around what their priority of needs are, and we've got the clients' priority of needs, and those 2 things are where the clash is. At the moment, we're not looking at the people, we're looking at what is the root cause here. So it seems like a time management problem. Rather than jump in too deep, let's first of all find out if that's Max's priority of need. Would changing the time to work so that he could still go to footy training be our goal, which it would be. So rather than get in and talking about the worker and things like that. So we would focus there around that. Let's have a look at here. So it says, describe 2 processes that could have been put in place for Max to act earlier. I wonder why Max sat with that for as long as what he did. So it's asking you to put in 2 processes. So something like having feedback for Max to know who to call. If he didn't want to raise it with the worker, was there another safe, more comfortable way for Max to raise that? He's in a project group and adding voice to it, so he feels comfortable in that environment, but we do need to be mindful of power imbalance, and I speak about that in our class session. We need to make sure that we're filling the needs of our clients. So rather than give it a definite, that's the only time I can do it, it would be Max, what would be another time so that you can still get to go to footy practice, and I can service you, or I may be able to assign another worker over. So, you know, what would you have put in? What are two? And there's no limit to how you answer this. So, and the next part is, how could Max's issue get included in a management process? Remember, we're doing a diploma. So it's likely that you're going to be either the person making the decision, or you're working very closely with the decision makers. They will be expecting you to be able to contribute with some strategies. So you'll need to respond to that. How could Max's issue get included in management processes? So that's either policy or procedure, or it's policy and procedure. And we'd write that into it. You'd need management to approve it. So, and the next one is, how could the program be modified to meet Max's needs? Provide two suggestions that you come up with. So how could we modify that program? I've given you a couple of examples that I would like to have seen the worker offer, Max. And then, so that's the first case study, and then you've got a second case study. So the second case study is about refugees. See. Okay, case study number 2 is, you are a project worker in community housing. A new program has been developed to encourage the growth of community gardens in the neighbourhood. Local government, the local primary school, and a local nursery are all going to collaborate, build capacity, and they're going to be partners in the project. One of the objectives of the program is to integrate some newly arrived refugees into the program. The refugees are from Syria. So here it is asking you, how might you ensure that staff are culturally aware in relation to people from Syria? What would you need to know, and what would you need to prep your staff, and what resources may they need? The next one covers, what type of external group might you draw on to facilitate this? The first thing would be, if we have English as another language, then do we have someone that we can bring into that so we can build that bridge? If that could be a barrier, then we need to come up with some strategies and think win-win. What methods could you use to communicate roles and responsibilities to the local nursery staff? What are some ideas there? And then, what are 2 documents you may develop as part of the program planning to set up the gardens and recruit participants? So you might decide, I want to send out an email, and I might want to send out a flyer. That could be 2 that you decide to work with there. So that is our task 2. And now let's have a look. It doesn't like that at all. Sorry. My brain went to a different unit. Okay. We want 007, and we would like task 3. And let's have a look at that role play. So you have 2 in this clustered unit, but let's break this one down. These all sit beside each other. So with the role play, it will ask you, and this was sitting in task 3 at all times. So up until then, it hasn't asked you to go into first access for anything. But before you jump into the skills component, the role plays, it is now asking you. So it's asking you to log in there, which will take you into that link. If it does not, then you need to contact LSO. It'll be something happening in your device. the username, Hader Institute, 2 words, and your password, Hader123456, and your instructions. So in part A of your role play for this task, you will be observed participating in a role play to confirm you can perform to industry standards and expectations. So by the time we get to the role plays, we've actually covered a bit more information. I sent you in a breakout room tonight, and we came back in a summary. That pretty much is what our role plays are. We have something to go into to discuss. We need to frame it around some of our knowledge that we're building while we're in this space, and then we make the application around it. So it's saying here that you are going to play the role of Estelle Lovett, a community support worker for First Access. Provide the role play instructions to the person playing the client, who is going to be Maria. This role can be played by another learner in your class, or it could be family member or friend. Keep in mind, though, the more authentic they are, you may have a family member and you just say, look, you've got to do it like this, and that's great. Or a mate or a friend, or someone who you know has worked in the sector who would love to jump in and be part of this for you. And we will just have a look at what the instructions for the role play say. So we already know that you've got to go into First Access website, and the login is there. It is not loving this. Okay, right, that doesn't really look very big. Let me see what I can do and just make that screen a little bigger for us. Just drop that page and open it up again for us. Sorry, thanks for your patience. Let's see if it'll let me do it here. Oh, they're going micro. All right, let me talk to you about this one. So in task 3, part B, so there's another task 3, part A, with the previous one. We're working on part B. Your role plays all have an instruction. So it says here, the role is Michael is translating and interpreter service operator, played by the other learner, family, friend, or a colleague from your workplace. So I spoke about what would be some of the other resources, and I thought, well, if they come from Syria, then maybe an interpreter. So in the role play, in task 3, following on from task 2, where we spoke about that. Now they want you to demonstrate that. So you are the service coordinator for First Access, and you oversee the community support workers. So now you're in an elevated role. And the student must have the following documents with them. So you need to go to case notes in First Access and client feedback report, also First Access. You can open the conversation with something such as, so tell me about Maria. How is she doing? The student, that's you, must respond with an outline of Maria's program, starting with her goals, priority of needs, and then providing information on her progress. So talking about the goals, intake assessment, and now we're talking about what would you most like to be able to focus on in our time together? And then we would get some feedback. So you're going to ask to evaluate Maria's overall progress. And you're also going to explain any new developments with Maria, and you as the student must respond that Maria is showing signs of depression, which the counsellor is addressing. So we're looking at how did she present? What is her mood? What is her risk to herself or others in this space, in our opinion, based on our session? So you'll also need to be asking the person who plays that role, what are some of the services that Maria can be referred to? We've already know there's counselling, and minimum would be a session with Maria, that her payments are correct with her new job, and apply in advance for the newborn payments she will be eligible for because she's having a baby. In the previous one, it talks about this as well, and her classes, and organise parental leave with her work. This is the kind of support that we may be doing if Maria is overwhelmed. You'll ask if there's any services that she no longer requires too. So it isn't always about what you need. Sometimes it is about what you don't need. Is that working? Has it been a good referral? If not, is there anything you would like me to do? Or is that something you feel that you've got enough out of? So it's always going back to our client with our intentional interviewing questions. And you thank them for attending the meeting. So that's our 007. Tasks 1, 2, and 3. And just ask me there. So that's part A, meeting with Maria. Part B is your supervisor. Sorry, we're in authoring, so it doesn't love that very much. So the resources that you need to go into First Access and get for this one is there's privacy policy and procedure, there's dependence and addiction policy and procedure, domestic family violence policy and procedure, code of conduct, housing and homelessness, privacy and confidentiality policy and procedure, plus consent to collect and share information. So that's your referral process. Before you can do that, and how to prepare for this is to go in and into your First Access site and look and review all of these. Now, this isn't just for the role play, this is for the whole of this clustered unit. These policies and procedures apply. So tonight we did a breakout room and a scenario. Here are the same things for a different client, but our protocols, our practices remain the same. So for us to refer any client over, we need to get their consent. To do that, it must be informed consent. So rather than say, oh, I'll send you over to these people, I just need you to sign this, we need to be able to say, well, we've talked about this. We've identified that this would be something that you would really like first in your priority. We can look at some of the other things. We spoke about those, but we could look at those perhaps at a later date. But there's a couple here that are more important today. If that changes, of course, we can review. But for right now, so we look at our intake and assessment, where we talk about everything they say to us is private and confidential, and that we would not disclose anything unless our client is at risk of harm, or others may be at risk of harm, or if someone is currently placing them in an unsafe environment and they're not comfortable, then we would need to report to our line manager. But I would be letting the client know that. Then I have to ask the question, does that sound okay? And can we proceed? we need a yes or a no, or I'm not really sure, I don't think I understand. We stay in that space until they have given us informed consent. We don't rush that, because otherwise that's just us deciding for them. Informed consent, if we don't have it, the client can circle back and say, they never said anything like that. I didn't tell them that they could go and tell all this other stuff to those people, and now I feel like they've already been talking about me. So we need to agree with our client, yes, we could do a referral. What would that referral be, and what do I need to share in that referral, and what don't I need to share? And the client needs to be reassured about this. So you need to have a good understanding around what your guidelines are, and how you need to work, because clearly in the history of this, Maria has that background. So let's just have a look at Maria as one of our role play examples. So 18-year-old female, dropped out of high school early, working in a factory, has a boyfriend who is a bit older. That's a 9-year age gap. There's a lot of developmental changes from 18 to 27. But they've been together for about 18 months. Maria started using ice when she met Lachlan and is now on the verge of losing her job. She has tried to stop. She can't afford to lose her job. However, Lachlan pressures her into the drug every time he uses it or when his friends come over for a session. Lately, Lachlan has become fairly aggressive when he is on ice, and Maria finds new bruises or cuts on herself the next day. She wakes up in pain and cannot recall what happened. Lachlan just laughs it off and tells her to harden up. Maria has also found out that she's pregnant. She reluctantly tells Lachlan, who does not react well and threatens to beat her up until she does lose the baby. During a recent visit, Maria's GP identified bruising around her shoulders, ribs and legs. Maria admits to the GP that Lachlan has been beating her up, particularly due to the pregnancy, as she wants to keep this baby. Maria expresses her distress and her fear of not only losing her baby, but what he might do to her if she left him. She knows he would come after her and try to hurt her. Maria wants to be able to support her baby by getting a better job somewhere and is considering going back to school on the side if she can. So these are Maria's own goals, and then you're doing the safety plan and the risk assessment around that. So we started our night off with a very complex case. Your assessment is also a complex case. So there's a future child to consider, but tonight's class it was discussed, and the evidence supports this, that in utero a child can be impacted by domestic family violence. If there are drugs or alcohol, could be fetal alcohol syndrome. It's not uncommon for hospitals to deliver meth babies, and they may do a hair sample, and child safety may be called in, where the baby may not even return home with the mother, and child safety or child protection services will step in. Now, that is a legal government authority. We don't go in and do that work, but we may be working beside people who do that work. So the diploma of youth work will not put you in that position. A diploma of youth work may put you in the area where other workers are doing that. This requires court orders before a child is removed. And there needs to be sufficient evidence. There is a 28-day temporary order. I'm speaking from Queensland. That may be different in your state or territory, but of course you're going to be researching that based on your information. And so the work that we're going to do here, Maria's priority of needs is looking after the baby, feeling safe, doesn't want to lose her job. The baby seems really important to her. She does feel very unsafe. She's a victim of domestic family violence. She's also very frightened to leave. And so she's seeking support. Her GP has referred her, and she has attended this appointment. Now we need to start working. So we have our intake, our assessment. We let her know that we must report to our line manager if there's a risk to her or she is a risk to others. In this case, I want you to reflect that she is a risk to her unborn child, and she is at risk based by an external party. The most vulnerable person here appears to be Maria. However, the unborn child has rights at this stage. So it is not our position to determine when is a child, but there is no advocacy, no voice around most children, and definitely not this baby. So we would not be stepping into this other than what would Maria think is important, and then letting Maria know I would need to share what we're talking about with my line manager, and the best way forward for you. Now, Maria only needs to commit to her readiness to want to be doing these things. If Maria returns back into an unsafe environment, that may require mandatory reporting. That's why you're going to go into First Access and look at those policies and procedures around that, and you will know where you want to head with it. Okay, so you're going to be framing this based on your organisation's policies and procedures for all workers with that. So we gave you that list a little bit earlier. Prior to the role play, you need to read these policies and procedures and documents and ensure that you apply any of the procedures that are required by the policies when you are sitting in that role play. So you might have some notes with you, but you can't read from a script. So your preparation and planning is very important. We will do the work in class around this, and hopefully you'll feel confident. Otherwise, when it comes to weeks 5 and 6, that's when I like to do the role plays with you in class. I assess you in real time, and we apply it very much like what we did tonight in our breakout room. You discuss it, you prepare for it, you come back, and that is the approach that you take. So each of you are assessed independently, but I can share what work you need to do. So there may only be 2 or 3 people in one week who are ready, and 2 or 3 people in another week. And then you might decide to collaborate together and in another time work a little bit further around that. If you can't make all of that flow, then that last hour of class, then I will open that up and provide more support around the role plays, because your skills form part of your assessment. We are in this space for 6 weeks. If you feel ready, and I'll only know because we discuss that in class, we can start these a little earlier if you would like. So here are the policies and procedures you must need. And then it says the consent to collect and share information. You will use the following prompts in your discussion. Identify the issues. Ensure you discuss the privacy policy and procedure of First Access. And that is where you do your disclaimer that anything that you say to me is private and confidential, and I will share nothing in this space. The only time that I would is when it becomes a matter of safety for you, and in some cases for others. If that is the case, then I need to share that with my line manager, because your safety is our priority, and we will work to put those wraparound supports there for you. You'll discuss your client's health and well-being. You'll discuss the risk factors and stereotypical issues as well. You'll identify what the client's client needs are, what they think are their priority of needs. You may share that view, but you might also consider there's some other things unknown or not yet thought of by the client. You may also have some priority of needs. How do we raise that with our client? We do that with open-ended questions: the who, the what, the how, the when, the where, and the why. So I might approach this, for example, what else might be really helpful for you at the moment, Maria? We've talked about housing. We've talked about you wanting to be safe. And we've also talked about how important your health and safety is for your baby. And it's great that you went to your GP and that you're coming and working with us. And we're all here to support you, Maria. So we just sit with that until Maria can identify anything. If she just goes, look, I need to get away, then that will become our priority of need as well, because it'll have that risk and safety around it. You'll recommend appropriate services and resources. You will have looked at what's available in your local area. But we do more in the community sector when it comes to referrals. It is not passive. We follow that whole journey. So Maria, we've got a couple of organisations. I can make a phone call if you like while you're still here. I can't speak to them because I don't have authority to act on your behalf. I can get your consent and we can do that now. But you can also talk to them and get a feel for it. And you can give authority for them to speak to me on the phone as well. How would that be? Oh, okay. I just want to think about it. Right. So we either do it or we wait. That's fine. Maria, we work at your pace. So you need to positively reassure her. You're not rushing. Domestic family violence is very complex. They're fearful. And while they may have engaged with you, they are also very frightened of somebody. And that is very real. And we are the in the meantime workers. So their life goes back to where that risk is, unless they're ready now. We talk about a safety plan, a go plan. Do we have a go bag on being able to leave safely? Is there a way we can do that without placing her at greater risk? But there are organisations in every state and territory who may be able to do that intervention. And it may be a matter of relocating, but it may be also a matter of getting Maria into a shelter where she is secure. And it may be a matter of focusing on her health first rather than what she's worried about, losing her job. What other kind of financial assistance might be available for Maria? So when people are under duress, they don't do their best work around coping mechanisms or problem solving. So that's our role. And we may walk beside them in every step of this way until we know that they are actually in that accommodation. So it isn't, I'll refer you over, I called and they've got a bed. Who's helping her access that service? What if she cannot walk through the mainstream process and requires us? So we need to check. Maria, is this something that you feel you could do yourself, or would you like me to support you with that? And we sit and we wait. If I help you, it is about this, and we work really closely. We're reassuring her closely with this organisation. In role play land, you have a magic wand, so you happen to have an organisation within walking distance who can give her all the support she needs, and even have assistance to go and collect any of her belongings as well, where they may work closely with the police and the vulnerable persons unit. You need to be aware of what services are available, and you do that with your research. So that's where the casework and the case studies are. What's out there in my local area? And if I was going to refer them to, what is in my local area? And if you don't know, you need to go looking. And this is where we start to get a portfolio of work. Could be just 10 numbers. Free call, there's some great safe domestic family violence. If she's not up to that in her decision-making process, then we need to make sure that she knows when she is ready, how to be able to do that. And we want to check in with her again if she would like to. So we need to, with the client, work out a suitable plan, the next steps, making sure that you've got consent from our client as per the privacy policy and procedures at First Access. And during your role play, this is what we assess you on. Did you identify the issues Maria is currently dealing with? For example, you must recognise and verbally state her issues back to Maria. Maria, today we've talked about this, it sounds like. Understand and relate to her experience of stereotypes and inequality within the community, as well, young pregnant teenager, that type of thing. Is a stereotype, refer to that, where she may feel judged if she's going in and accessing these services. This is where your support comes in. And for example, you must be able to identify types of issues and challenges that young, unemployed, pregnant and abused victims in society face. So research that. We brought up a great case study that's real, that I'm working in that space and have been for a while, and it's still current. So we need to make sure that we have a good understanding around what are those challenges, and then identify the impacts of long-term unemployment and limited and lack of education in Maria. For example, you must be able to analyse the potential issues for Maria if she is long-term unemployed, and the challenges of not having a formal education or a certificate, which makes her even more unemployable in her mind, but nobody is unemployable. So we have to work from a strength-based plan and getting up and being able to balance any changes coming and holding down her work. But we also need to make sure that the partner is not placing them at risk. You'll need to provide advice about service recommendations and referrals. That's where we do give advice. Look, I've got a great go-to list here, and there's an amazing resource. So I'd like us to explore a resource. If you have one, we can discuss that in class. If you don't have one, then part of your breakout room work is I'm going to give you a website. It's not in... it's based in Queensland, but it is very similar to any of those funded providers, and I think you might find that quite interesting. And it's highly regarded around Queensland, the one that I work with closely, and it's a great website, safe for people to go in, and it loses any of your history. You can get out of it quickly, and it doesn't show the site you've been on. So just about every other area has been thought of, so there's a lot of safety in that, and we may need to explain those things to a client. And then what is some other additional outsourcing to service providers? Housing, a prenatal clinic, making sure that she's going to those programs where she learns about nutrition and her own health and sleep as well. She may require some trauma counselling, and then our demonstration, our practical skills. Also, we need to display empathy, non-judgmental, speak in an appropriate tone with her and pace, which would be gently, and clearly articulate what the next steps will be in the plan and ensure the client understands and how we fit into that for them. If they ask us to do something outside the scope of our role, then we have to even manage that appropriately with compassion and say, that's actually not part of my role, but I do have people who do that here at First Access or a very close organisation, but I can walk beside you while you're accessing their support. So you're not abandoning her or just doing a referral out and that's the end of it. We're still trying to continually re-engage if that's the case. Even if they don't take action and the timing isn't right, this is about them feeling they can trust us. And people only trust us if we are consistent in what it is that we say we're going to do. So if we say we're working at your own pace when you're ready, then we don't push, because that means we're just negating everything that they said. We might have a mandatory reporting requirement here where we ask for a wellbeing check. And you'll discuss that with your line manager, but you'll find the answers to the next step in our policies and procedures in First Access. And then continually provide reassurance. For example, explain how the service recommendations will be effective and how they will be monitored and how we get to revise together at a later date if she wants to change her mind or one of these other priorities has been dropped down and another one has come up. So you'll be required to do a video recording and it will be no more than 15 minutes, but it won't be less than 10. You save your work in MP4 format or similar, and you will have completed the document, which is the consent to collect and share information, which you're going to get from First Access. And it will be uploaded a recording where you're there with the client and you're going through all of those things, and you and the client, someone will play Maria, and you will have this supporting document and the form steps out how to fill it in, and you're going to personalize that with Maria's information. Okay, so I'll stop sharing there, simply because that's our 007. And then in week 2, I'll unpack more around the 005 components. It's the same. It's got a task 1, a task 2, and a task 3 role play. And by the end of tonight, you've got an overview of what's required with the 007. That's our foundation. And then 005 is our application. How do we do this thing that we've decided and we've thought about and we've researched and we've got a better understanding? Now we're going to do the 005. How are we going to work with other organisations and implement the plan that we've worked together on? The second part of this is that discussion. So there's 2 parts to the role play for you as well. So I'll close off. We've done part 1 in a little bit of an overview and class discussion, where we actually rolled out exactly what I'm looking for in those role play sessions. And then I've done part 2, which is specifically around the assessment for the 007 part of our clustered unit, and it's only week 1. Week 2, we'll bring in 005, we'll do another scenario, and we will start prepping for what does that look like for task 2, which will be around the project work. But tonight and next week, our focus is around working on task 1 and leading into task 2 for 007. So I'd just like to say good night and thank you all. And if you need anything, please reach out to our learner support officers or directly in an email with me, which is viki@hayderinstitute.edu.au. So the only difference there is instead of LSO, you will put VIKI, all lowercase, though an uppercase would find me. And then we all have that same handle on it for at hayderinstitute.edu.au. So please reach out if you've got any questions. I may flag that for you on your behalf if it sits with LSO. you don't need to know who does what, especially if you're brand new. If you reach out to me, I will follow it up and make sure that I've escalated that for you. If you reach out to LSO and they can't help you with an area, they will send it back to me. So we work and collaborate internally and externally with every other department that we have at Haida as well. And the LSO team are amazing, and they have a huge community like we do. We have over 2,000 learners enrolled, and we run 6 different scopes, and then we have Cert 3s, Cert 4s and diploma levels as well. So please reach out if you've got any questions between now and next Monday. Otherwise, we will see you then.